After weeks of scouring the internet for my dream job, I had finally found the needle in the haystack, an internship. As I began to work on my resume, an epiphany had struck. How can I stand out from the average intern? Then it hit me. As I pressed my tab key, I selected the font. Comic Sans, the Walmart of all fonts, the Justin Bieber, the flip phone. According to the CBC, Vincent Conair, the creator of Comic Sans, stated that he used it to complain about bad service by a company. He said if they didn't get back to him the first time, they'd at least notice it the second time. In fact, after Vincent wrote this letter, the company reached back to him and scored him a small refund. Fonts speak to people on personal levels. Certain fonts call for certain occasions. Essays in Times New Roman, job applications in Helvetica, elementary school All About Me posters in Jokerman. When you think of the oversized yellow arched M, it's the universal font for McDonald's. The calligraphy style D for Disney, enchanting young audiences. Which brings us here now. Today we're going to talk fonts. First we're going to talk about the history of typography, followed by the psychology of fonts, and finally the evolution. First, let's discuss the history of fonts and typography. So I know what you may be thinking. What is a font and why does it matter? Well, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary describes a font as an assortment or set of characters, all of one style and sometimes one size. Surprisingly enough, fonts date all the way back to the Renaissance. No, Shakespeare didn't write Romeo and Juliet in Comic Sans. Going all the way back to the 15th century in 1440, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers claims that the famous Johannes Gutenberg first invented the printing press, a device that applies pressure to an inked surface resembling transferred ink, shown in the New World Encyclopedia in a 2019 article. The first font created was known as the Blackletter and was used to resemble the calligraphic handwriting used by monks. This would then grow into serifs, modernized serifs, and sans serifs. Fast forward to 1968 when bell-bottoms consumed pop culture and people would wear platform shoes. The first digital font created was known as the revolutionary DigiGrotesque, developed by Rudolf Hell, stated by Graphic Design History in a 2011 article. This is the classic black and green Pac-Man contrast looking font. This font wasn't used for computers, rather Rudolph's typesetting machines, which set text by projecting an image into a lens which then transferred onto paper. Flash into the late 1980s. Perms are everywhere, mom jeans were a thing, and somehow mullets were a staple. According to Forbes, Apple revolutionizes the world of technology by coming out with the first computer, the Apple Macintosh. This is revolutionary because now big companies and businesses don't have to use it. Around the same time, TrueType Fonts was created. Microsoft explains that TrueType was the standardized default font for all PCs and devices, which is now the most common font for all PCs. So we discussed the history of fonts, but let's get into the psychology. You see, marketing is a clever industry. Companies utilize their knowledge of psychology and human behavior to match their products with fonts that will most appeal to their target demographic. If we were to survey a group of Americans to brainstorm some famous logos, they would probably think of Coca-Cola, Disney, Ford, or Starbucks, maybe even bands like AC/DC, The Doors, Nirvana, or my personal favorite, The Beatles. Each thing listed all has an iconic font associated with it. The Institute of Safe Medication Practices describes that larger and less compressed fonts are easier for individuals to read, being that Helvetica is the standardized font for caution and warning signs. It's safe to say that it would be bizarre if we saw a hazardous warning sign written in cursive bubbly lettering. If we look into the industry of merchandise targeted towards children, whether it be books, clothing, toys, or cereal, they all have the same underlining factor. The National Research Council crafted a novel known as How People Learn, debriefing the ideology that children are attracted to certain typography. When marketing product towards children, using a warm, large, inviting, and easy-to-read font is most suggested. Taking a look at the Captain Crunch font versus Fiber One, it can easily be categorized into two niches: children's advertising and adults. While Captain Crunch has puzzles and minigames on the back, all of which are displayed in large, bold letters easy enough to pinpoint at the grocery store, having three brothers growing up, everybody wanted the opportunity to gaze at the Captain Crunch box. This varies from the Fiber One because the targeted audience for adults displays a more refined and minimalistic style typography. Going back to my three older brothers, I have no recollection whatsoever about viewing the Fiber One box, let alone eating the cereal at all. So the next time you find yourself more attracted to a cursive Campbell's soup rather than the neighboring SpaghettiOs, take into consideration the world of marketing and how fonts and typography play large roles into everyone's day-to-day basis. So we know where we've been, but what is the future of fonts and typography? Well, the founder and executive director of Ion Design Project remarks a surplus of fonts will arise in the next decade. Monotype, another market scheme for the holding of all fonts such as TrueType, discusses a variable font as a new outcome for the future. As designers and manufacturers have been limited to only using 4 to 5 fonts per website, variable fonts offer designers a wider range and greater freedom when it comes to creating a consistent brand language. The geometric sans serif has become an identity for the world of technology, quoted by type designer Gunnar Vilhelmsen. Sleek and technological branding has been a breakthrough in millennial years, along with quirky, bubbly lettering used in yoga brands or newsletters. Probing the question that lies in the future, will emojis be included in fonts? Well, surprisingly enough, according to Morgan Messick, a marketing and communications manager, she recalls that 50% of all businesses view emojis as more lighthearted and fun. Over 10 billion emojis are sent a day worldwide, and 92% of the online population uses emojis every day. Although we'd love to see a yellow smiley face associated with the Popeyes chicken, using emojis for commercial purposes in today's age only brings the possibility of infringement. Looks like I should scratch creating my own toilet plunger business. I left one too many poop emojis in my proposition paper. Don't get too sad, because it's still an idea that many officials are considering for the future. So we've discussed the history of typography, the psychology of fonts, and the evolution, whether it be emojis or not. Taking into consideration what our future may hold for fonts is, quite interestingly enough, a large and unidentified answer. May emojis appear in professional companies? Will the resurgence of Blackletter appear in financial documents? Will Captain Crunch boxes become more monotone and sophisticated? Going back to my job application and my internship, I hit submit and I bit my nails down to my cuticles as I waited. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, the company reached back to me and informed that I was officially the building's janitor. Life couldn't be any better.